So let's jump in here. I'm going to bring on David. David, welcome. Oh, let me unmute you here, David. I muted David, as a StreamYard.
Was it all the swear words?
Yes, it was. It was very profane what you'd done earlier.
Kyle, yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to talk about this.
Oh, likewise. Yeah, I'm super excited. So for everybody who doesn't know, we'll do a little background on myself and on David here in a minute. But David and I, like I mentioned, we wrote a book called The Sales Development Framework. How many years ago now, David?
We're going on 4 years now, almost
4 years. 4 years, yes. My hair much more gray than it was back then. Yeah. And we wrote this book. It's a step-by-step framework on how to build a high-performing sales development function. And with AI now, things are changing massively. I think the fundamentals still stay. Like if you look at the book, all that stuff still holds up, but you need to have a little bit of a different lens now when you're executing on some of this stuff. And there's some very hypey, unhelpful things that get spoken about when it comes to AI and SDRs that I want to kind of debunk a little bit here at some point around what AI is going to be replacing, what it's not going to be replacing, etc. But David, why don't we jump in to the deck here and you take it away, and then we'll pause just so everybody knows. We're going to pause at different points and we're going to have some more discussion around the future of SDR.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, I can advance the deck too. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, cool. So Kyle, you blew the lid off the whole thing. So basically, there's the tried and true methods that go back forever, and then layering on the new technology accelerates things, whether they're good or bad. And so that's, I think the book is still relevant in that it's a very tried and true methodology for driving sales development performance. And now there's a whole new tool set that's come onto it. So we'll just get straight to the point right there. The more things have changed, the more they've stayed the same, basically, in driving the pipeline. So we've been working on this for a while, and as you know, I mean, Kyle is hands-on directly with his clients, working with the latest tools and technologies to implement this. And you're seeing all kinds of crazy stuff out there.
Yeah, and I'll jump a little bit in here too, David. We're building a lot with AI today at Forest. So I hired a developer about a month and a half ago, and we're building tools where as deep as you can get into using AI. I'm not talking about, we can build these little agents with some no-code tools. Like, we are coding, we are building tools, we're deploying these things in the real world. I have a very, very strong sense of where AI is very powerful today, where it's really missing the mark when people try to use it in certain ways, as well as see things going. And kind of, if you're trying to catch a boat going this way and you're going this way, like, where do I need to move to make sure that we meet at the right time? So I'm going to have a lot of insight around that. I've worked with over 80 software and service companies building repeatable sales processes. We've written 3 books, one of them with David here. I'll actually put the link to that right now in the chat if you guys want to check that book out. It's called The Sales Development Framework. And across all of my clients that are venture backed, which about 30% of the companies I've worked with have been venture backed, they've raised over 280 million in venture capital, and across all of my clients, we've sold over 100 million in software and services. So I have both the practical experience of running these organizations, also leading these organizations, as well as real hands-on work with AI that I think you guys are going to find really helpful.
Amazing. Take us away. All right, cool. And we've been working together now for a while. We've been trying to gather all the sales technology tools onto tenbound.com and give people a one-stop shop to be able to look at them and then implement them in their company. And it's crazy, like, trying to keep up with everything that's going on right now in all the developments that are happening in sales technology. And if anybody's ever looked at the market map of all the different companies, I cannot keep track. One, it's way easier to start a company right now than it used to be. And on the flip side, they come up and go down, and it's just sort of head spinning. all the different technologies that are out there. So we try to make sense of that at Tenda. And perfect timing, right? Because as we've seen, Kyle, with all the different developments, some have made a huge difference, but some have accelerated a lot of the issues that you see with sales development. And if you've been on the receiving end of this outreach and things like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, let me rip a bit of a Band-Aid here.
Yeah.
We are really far away from AI completely replacing the SDR function. Very far away.
Yeah.
And I want to just let you guys know, like, that is the premise from my perspective that I want everyone to catch from me, is that is way farther away than it might appear. And there's so much hype and marketing around AI SDR that I think it's really not helpful for a lot of folks, because we need to be realistic about what AI is doing well and what it's not doing well. So anyway, David, I wanted to say that before you jump in here.
Yeah. And you know, we're identifying a lot of the issues. It's one, there's a flood of new technology that's coming out into the market that people are trying to figure out. And that can layer on the process that's not been figured out well. And then that's why it goes back to when we wrote the book, to give people a repeatable process that you can then hang new technology on top of. And so that's sort of the hurricane, is all these different tools and technologies are coming out, and they're all promising that we can, number one, replace SDRs, completely. We don't need SDRs anymore. Or they're promising, if you are an SDR, I can make you into 50 SDRs by just pressing a button and focusing on the bright shiny objects. So there's a lot of hype there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'd be curious to hear if you could type in the audience here, type in what you're hearing out there, what you're seeing when it comes to AI and SDRs. Is it positive? Is it more like email automation stuff? Is it the cold calling stuff? Like, what are you hearing the most of? Is it the SDRs are going away, or SDRs aren't going away? I'd just be curious to get a sense, if you guys could be a little thoughtful, write a sentence or two around what are some of the things that you're hearing or seeing in content out there of involving SDRs and AI. The reality is, and this is something that I want to make sure anyone here who might not be totally familiar with how AI systems work, I want to make sure you realize realize this. Today, the AI tools that we use, the AI models that we have, are incredibly good at predicting what text needs to come next. I want to be very clear about that. When you hear AI agents, at the end of the day, if you're building an AI agent, it's a prompt that is going to an LLM. That prompt is going to generate a text output. So the reason why I want to stress this is because that is very far from an AI being able to do the entire role of an SDR. I think some things it can do really well, like generate text. I think it's ridiculous to have an SDR manually personalizing an email today. Doesn't make sense. But there's certain things that SDRs can do that AI isn't quite there yet because of the amount of nuance involved. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. But let's read some of these, David, here. So Graham said automation, mostly email automation with SQ. Do you know what that stands for, David?
No.
Okay, me either. Business owners looking for a quick solution and thinking it's the answer. I'm yet to see this. Yeah, Matt, totally. It's so funny. Like, if you guys have caught this wave of AI agents, there's a lot of hype around AI agents. I watched this, like, it was probably like an hour or 20-minute video. David, I should send it to you. It's wild. But this guy builds an AI agent that is his personal assistant and does everything that you would want a personal assistant to do. So, that's the claim. So I'm watching this video and he starts giving a demo of this AI agent. And he goes, all right, look, so I have an email right here. And what I can do is, using Telegram on my phone, I can say with voice, hey, can you reply to the email from David about the future of the SDR class and let him know that we're still on for Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time? And now what happens is my assistant agent transcribes that text, takes it to the email agent that drafts the email, then sends that drafted email to the email sender agent that sends the email to David. And I'm like watching all of this stuff and I go, or you could have just replied to the email you were looking at. How useful was that?
Yeah.
Hey, we move our meeting from 11 o'clock today to 12, or you're looking at your calendar, just move the meeting. So it's like we're using this AI as a fun tool to demo and show like some flashy stuff that's going on. But that stuff isn't deeply useful. I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
When you're using AI, anybody who's built an AI agent or they've built like more advanced prompt stuff, here's what happens. You're like, hey, I'm going to create a prompt that, let's say, just writes a cold email for a prospect. And what you do is you're like, all right, this prompt, I'm going to give the website of the prospect. I'm going to give details on our offering, and then it's going to go create the cold email. You do that. That's a very simple prompt to make, and it'll work great for the example website that you give it that you're using every time while refining the prompt. Then you give it another website, it doesn't come out as good. So you're like, why not? And you kind of look into it, and then you're like, all right, let me tweak the prompt a little bit because this is explained in a bit of a different way than how the other company laid out their website. So I got a little confused. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, I fixed it. Now it handles both these situations. Then you run through it and you realize, wait a minute. My output for the first thing that I built for isn't as good as it was before. It's a moving target. And it's because you can't handle every edge case that's possible to come up. So in the example of an AI agent that replies to email for you, for very similar, well-structured emails that are always going to be the same, sure, we can build an AI agent to do that. But to handle all of the different edge cases, it can't yet. When will it be able to? That's artificial general intelligence. That's AGI. That means it learns. It can adapt like humans adapt. And that is going to be incredibly powerful. And I believe we are so far off from that. But let's go through a couple of, any thoughts on that, David, while I pull?
Well, I think you hit on two examples that I've seen as on the receiving end for outbound is the emails are getting a little bit better. I have to say,
totally.
I mean, they're a little bit more eye catching. They're a little bit more customized. They're a little bit strange. Some of the emails that I get where they're pulling in things that it's like, dude, how do you know that? And I know that it's AI, creating it. So that caught my eye a little bit. And then on inbound, the AI agents that are embedded into websites, I think are getting better. And I'm not saying that all inbound SDRs are going away, but you can see the writing on the wall there.
For sure. Oh, yeah, definitely. And why? The reason why is because it's more defined. They're interested. You're not searching for where there might be an opportunity to be helpful, right? Because they're coming to you, have an idea that this is something that they want to use or they could want to use. It's a lot easier to control for that. Here's a couple other people have noticed with AI SDRs plus agentic workflows, it seems like the SDR function might be completely automated. That's the stuff that he's hearing, right? This is the stuff that we're seeing. AI SDR eating up jobs from inbound, just what you just talked about, David, to start with, and we'll eat outbound too, things I'm hearing in the market. Let me grab a couple other ones. I get tons of crap SDR AI generated email spam. Haven't implemented voice SDRs yet because I'm concerned about some of the acceptance. So it's also small batch testing. So a couple of things here, like let's go talk about what Jonathan just said. For outbound cold calling, you can't use AI callers. It's illegal. It's robocalling. So it's not happening there. The best place for these things, the best application of these things are going to be with inbound leads, which isn't a big deal. Like maybe SDR should only be cold calling anyway, right? Like maybe they shouldn't be calling people who said, hey, I want to see a demo, right? Where do we want to apply that general nature and the adaptability of a human to be able to have these deeper conversations and be able to understand where the pain points are? Let me go through a couple other ones here. This is from LinkedIn. I'm hearing more about automation and live helping on cold calls in terms of responses live. And then AI automates, accelerates movement through funnel if the primary benefit is clear. That's the key part. It has to be clear, right? AI can help with automation, but cannot replace SDRs. That's what I think is true. Okay, and then here's a longer one here from LinkedIn. We tried cheap, it failed. Now we try cheaper and expect something else. After cheap devs making project fails, how are we going into AI making project fails? I'm having trouble reading this one, and leaving us with no devs interested in learning. So hopefully, lot of project rescue business. I can't understand you. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's my fault.
I think he's trying to tackle, you can have it fast and cheap, but it's not, I can't remember. There's three things.
That's right. Fast, cheap, and good.
But not good. You can have it good, fast, but it's not cheap,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're at a place here, and we're going to get back into the deck in a minute here, but we're at a place right now where I think people are very excited about what AI can do, but also AI can't do that promise yet. And because we're so used to technology moving really, really, really quickly, it's easy for us to just say, hey, in 2 years from now, SDR is going to be completely replaced. I don't think that's the case. I think it's going to take a lot longer than that, a lot longer. But David, let's go back to the deck here, and we can continue. And I just got the message back. So, empty lines were cut out by the chat. That's why it was hard to read the last one.
Got it. Okay. So, and we touched on a lot of this. If you add automation to bad process, then you get oversaturation and essentially antibiotic resistance, because you're applying speed to a bad process, and also the way that people have consume information and data has changed a lot just over the last couple of years. There's such a fire hose of information coming at prospects that just adding more emails, more of everything, it just sort of washes over the clients, and you just never hear anything back. So that's what I'm seeing. When I think about SDRs and the application of this new technology, it's going all the way back to Clay Christensen and thinking about the jobs to be done on a daily basis for an SDR and what they're trying to accomplish. And so, just a few of the basic ones. So if you go back, 10 years, it was a lot of the day was just spent doing research and trying to find tidbits of information, phone numbers, emails, et cetera, digging through multiple databases to try to find this information. And we had, you remember, Kyle, the silent sales floor was a thing, a few years ago. And this is before COVID, obviously, when people worked in an office, but you would walk around and it would literally be a library in the office, because that's what people were doing. They were spending so much of their time just trying to find information. And
back then, the argument that I was making, I'm sure you were making similar ones too, which is like, why are we having our sales reps do this job? They should just be speaking to people, right? Yeah. Well, it was because somebody had to, and it had to be somebody who really understood the offering and could properly qualify. But anyway, like, these problems happened before in the past, and back then they felt annoying. I didn't want a silent sales floor. I wanted the loudest sales floor ever.
Yeah. I mean, you want it to be hopping and talking to people, making those conversations. And a lot of the day was just doing research, basically. And then it's like, okay, I found the guy's name and phone number, and now I need something to say that's relevant to them, so that when I reach out, we can have a good conversation, or by email and things. So creating relevance. Okay, that's a whole other set of information that I need to pull and process, right? And then finally, I need to pick up the phone, or send the email and do the actual activities, because as the next level up from there, you're monitoring the performance of the SDR team and understanding conversion rates. This is essentially what it comes down to, the science of driving pipeline production. And so, if you think of it from a purely conversion perspective, there's your addressable market that's out there of companies that could potentially buy the product. There's people that work at the companies. They may or may not have a pain point. And then we have to engage with them, talk to them, and get them to have a meeting with the salespeople. And how is that flowing through? This is a funnel that we have in the book, right, Kyle?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so if there's choke points, if there's pain points in the job to be done, then it slows everything down and you have less production. Yeah.
And this is how we should always be using technology. We should be rolling out new technology to solve acute challenges that we're having and experiencing today, not trying to reinvent the entire wheel. The phone came a really long time ago. And email was supposed to change the way that we do prospecting, and it did. Today, phone is still more effective than email, at least across all of the companies that I work with. It's still more effective. How come email didn't fully take over? You can argue the reasons why. Like, we all understand why the phone is probably more effective than the phone. Like, if we just sat around, everyone who's a smart person could figure that out. But the point I'm trying to make here is it takes a while for these technologies to kind of take over. There was a time where cold email was incredible, and then boom, it got crushed, right? So during these times, it's very tempting to go, oh, I need to start doing this. I need to do full AI SDRs. I need to do this kind of thing here. I'm telling you, you can close your eyes for 2 years, open them, and you're probably going to be okay. Because the AI landscape today is going to look very different than it does in 2 years from now. And I don't think you need to be along for that 2-year journey. I think it's going to take a lot longer than that before like you could feel like you're missing out. But anyway, we can go back here.
No, that's the point. It's like, how are the conversion rates ticking up or down, and what are the inputs that are going into those conversion rates, and where are we seeing success? And so the homework for everybody on the call is, let's sit down and write out all the jobs to be done, and literally it's the Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, the Elon Musk email. What did you get done this week? Like, what specifically do SDRs do?
What do you spend your time on?
What do you spend your time on? The jobs to be done at the end of the day is setting up appointments that are qualified for the salespeople, or taking that, if you're the combination SDR AE, then it's spending half of your day prospecting and setting appointments. What are the jobs to be done, and what are the metrics that you're trying to achieve, and where in that process are the slack points and the choke points that could potentially be layered on with this eye chart of technology that's out there. So it's flipping it around. You don't have to know everything about every category of sales technology. You don't have to know every single one of these companies. All you have to know is, within my prospecting process, where am I losing time?
Mm-hmm. Explain what this chart is that we're looking at here, the crazy one that you can't read.
It is. I mean, this is like the number one click on the 10bound website. For some reason, people love market maps, and they like to just look at all the different technologies that are out there. And this is my friend Nicholas. I could never say his last name, but he created this, and it's essentially all the categories based on the jobs to be done, and then all the current vendors that we know are in business and serving the sales technology space in one mega slide, that you can download and look at.
And look at this, and you can get it on the 10bound website. But I just want to draw everyone's attention to this. This is so many companies. This is like an unbelievable amount of companies, all tackling different parts of the equation that is going to market. I mean, how unbelievable is that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this is just a side note, but there, especially like a few years ago, there was a lot of excitement and for lack of a better word, it was very sexy, to get into the sales technology space and come up with a whiz bang product and stuff like that. There was a lot of momentum in solving that problem. And, you saw it from two angles. There was ex salespeople and ex SDRs who were super frustrated. And so they created something to help solve a problem that they had. Or it was like two brilliant guys from Stanford who, had this great idea and they wanted to break into the sales technology market and exploit it. So, and both sides have been successful.
Yeah, definitely. And this is where we go back to what I was saying before, which is you have to be thoughtful about the technology that you deploy, because it's not all it's so easy to sell sales technology because it's so tied to revenue. So the ROI calculation is simple. So you need to be thoughtful about what is this actually doing for me. A question came in, and normally I take questions at the end, but I thought this was good and I wanted to address it now. How do you view the future role of a sales rep? Don't just say yes to this, but or I think it's who don't just say yes to this, but are future SDRs and inbound AEs more like a sales ops person coordinating the tech to hit the API? Or sorry, if so, how do we normalize the training of SDRs with so many tech options and so many new AI features every week? So if so, I'm going to have to delete everything after that, because I actually don't think this is what the role of the SDR and the inbound AE looks like. There might be a part of it where they're orchestrating technology. Maybe I question whether that's even going to be true. I think the coordination of technology will be housed in the sales ops department. It might even get swallowed up by marketing, by the way, especially from an outbound perspective. You can think that is a type of marketing. It was useful to have outbound under sales because that's where the role goes, and the skill set required to do the outbound is very similar to the skill set required to close the deal. So it was a good training ground, a good path for talent. I could see that completely getting swallowed up by marketing. But the parts that are really difficult are the cold calling itself. I think if that ever happens, it's very long, very far from now. And I'll put a big if there. You have to understand the amount of data required to train models to do this type of work. It's an unbelievable amount of data. Let me give you an example of this. I have a good friend of mine who works at a very large AI company, and he got hired recently. And you want to know his job? His job is to sit at his computer like this. An image pops up on the screen of a street, and he types in what type of sign he sees and what the sign means. And then he pushes enter, click. Boom, a new image. What kind of sign is this? What does it do? Enter. Boom, wow. New image. What kind of sign is this? What does it do? Enter. That's crazy. That's also training. Mm-hmm. That data is used to then train a large language model, or in this case, it's I don't want to talk too much about what they're working on, but whatever. This is like image and stuff like that, image recognition. They're training AI systems to do stuff. It takes a lot of data, and it's not as easy as, oh, here's a script, here's what our product does. All the things that ChatGPT does now, it was trained on books about sales, blog posts about sales. How much publicly available sales call data exists? Not that much. You look at a company like Gong, probably has the most call recording data ever. They might have enough data to actually train their own model. Mm-hmm. But they're not just plugging it into ChatGPT and hoping things come out well. You would use that data to actually train and develop your own model, a model that is solely focused on selling. But in the same token, in the same breath, I can say, how do we know what good looks like? So, for example, if you're going to train a model, you need to have the input. Hey, here's the question. So DeepSeek, let's take DeepSeek, for example. There's a lot of evidence to show that DeepSeek was trained using OpenAI. In fact, before the market exploded about DeepSeek. If you remember, like Nvidia stock crashed like 15% or whatever in one day because DeepSeek was able to do this training way cheaper. That was a claim, and it's argued whether they did it for 6 million or not. But there's a lot of evidence. I believe they call it distilling. There's a lot of evidence that they distilled OpenAI's model. And in fact, if you use DeepSeek early, which I did, and you asked it what it was, which I did, its response was, I am ChatGPT developed by OpenAI. And this is some Chinese AI system. Okay, how they do this is you do what's the input, and you get a perfect output. So if you're distilling a model, you're just going to assume it has a good output, and you're going to train based on that. The reason why I'm bringing this up is, let's say you wanted to create let's say you just wanted to fine tune an existing language model to make it better at writing email copy. What you would do is you would show what the input looks like. You'd give it the input, which might be write me a cold email about blah, 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 blah. And then you'd show them the perfect output, which would be like the human wrote this. And then you do that over and over and over again. Here's an input, here's an output example. That looks perfect. And you do enough of these, and the AI could recognize a pattern, and now it can start taking unique inputs and spitting out outputs that look really close to what the human would do, because it had so many examples of the inputs and then the perfect outputs. That's how these things are developed. So I just want to be clear about that. That's why when I say we're far from this stuff, I'm very far. And like John just pointed out here about Gong, he's heard that they are building their own model. Not surprised to hear that. But now let's even talk about Gong. How do they know how effective that sales call was? This is much more challenging than you might think. I don't know what percentage of Gong users actually provide Gong with enough data for them to tell which deal closed, which deal didn't close, based on leads, right? So this stuff is hard, is my point. I'm not saying they're not going to do it. By no means read that me as saying that. What I'm telling, they will figure it out. In fact, what I'm telling you, and what I want everyone to understand is these things are way more challenging than it appears. And there's 1,000 marketers out there saying that everything is done today. Oh, it's all ruined. In 2 years, they're going to be completely replaced. These things are much more challenging to do correctly, and you need them to be done correctly because you're competing against a human.
Yeah. Well, we've got job security, right? That guy.
In some ways, at least for now.
Identifying signs as an AI, it sounds like he's kind of digging his own grave, because by the time he gives them all that information, they don't need him anymore. So now he's just a robot.
Well, yeah, totally. And but you can argue like there's more to train. Like so much of this stuff is private. We'll go back to the slides in a minute, but John, now a big market in private models. I totally believe this. I totally believe that there's going to be a big market for private models that are trained on really specific data. So here's a great example. Everyone's talking about coding, like in the AI world. They're talking about how effective AI coding is. Vibe coding is this term that has come out as very popular use. Yeah. Here's the thing. So let's say you want to create a video game. Well, to create a video game, you need a lot of training data on the source code of video games, how they work, and that's what's required. There's not much of that. You want to make Call of Duty? Call of Duty's code isn't public. I can't go scroll through Call of Duty's code. So there's not that much publicly available data for a lot of this stuff. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind. It is not as easy to build this stuff as it might seem like. It's very easy to create a little, text writing chatbot interface. But when I say very easy, you have to call out how challenging it was for him to get it to where it is now. But I'm saying like to apply that to any other tools is not challenging. The development of that technology is really impressive. But I can use OpenAI. I mean, I do. We build tools with OpenAI's API right now. So to get like it to predict text is fine, but to do things really high quality, it's a lot more challenging than that. In fact, part of one of the things that we developed is a way to create cold call scripts with AI, and you'd think that would be pretty simple. It's 21 prompts. It takes me 21 prompts to build to create a script, a cold call script with AI that when I read it, I go, this is great. 21. Wow. Okay. So just think through, like, this stuff is much more challenging than it looks. Anything from you, David, before we go back to the deck?
No, it's just interesting because, somebody asked me if Tenbound still does consulting, and I said, we've been basically replaced by AI. If you want us, and now you're making me think, like, not necessarily. Someone has to be prompting the AI to do it.
100%. If there's a skill to learn
right now, and said, produce a sales development playbook. Now, people used to pay 20, 30 grand just a couple of years ago for their custom sales development playbook. Now I can go to ChatGPT and get one in 2 seconds. So yeah,
and one of the things that I'll give everybody here is, if there's a skill that you really should learn, it's prompt engineering.
yeah.
Now, look, you might not need to learn it for a couple of years, so don't panic and then just go learn something, because a lot of stuff gets outdated. Like, even the prompting stuff that I was doing 6 months ago is very different than the prompting stuff that I'm doing today. In some ways, there's some fundamentals that overlap, but if I had not paid attention to AI until today, I probably wouldn't be any further. I'm only slightly further along than I would be. So anyway, let's go.
Dinosaurs. But one last quick thing about what Patrick asked there is, I would look at it as, if you've ever heard the concept of zero-based budgeting. You get to the beginning of the fiscal year or whatever, and you're doing your budgeting. You wipe out everything off the board, and you go, what is the minimal requirement budget that we need in order to maintain or continue to be successful? I would look at this the same way. So you sit down and you go, okay, SDR jobs, what are they doing specifically each day? And where are the choke points? Where are the bottlenecks? AEs is the same thing. What did you get done last week? And what were you doing? So let's start with there, and let's build out the jobs to be done functions, and then understand, okay, there's a huge red flag right here. There's a huge choke point. And now let's go talk to the sales tech vendors and see if they can help us with that. And I mean, it sounds so basic, Kyle, but what I see out there over and over again is these bloated tech stacks of somebody plugged in, something 5 years ago. They don't even work at the company anymore. Nobody, it's on a credit card that we haven't looked, and it's just bad governance, of the economics of your company to have that happening. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I totally agree. Good stuff. All right, let's go back to the deck here and continue onward.
Yeah. And so this is interesting, in looking at the new models, because a lot of us, if you're, a dinosaur here, we came up in the age of predictable revenue, and it's essentially what we were talking about. So you would get your Apollo license and they used to call it Zen Prospect back in the day. Anybody remember that?
I do.
Apollo and Zoom Info, and then you're sitting there all day, combing through info, calling people, hoping that something happens, and then they sort of applied the predictable revenue model. Okay, now we're going to apply the science to whether or not you're having conversations and converting them into meetings and giving them to the AE. Great. Okay. Now it's, and I'll give full credit to Lanny Hines, who put out this model. It's first and foremost, having the AI systems out there do more of the heavy lifting in the research, in the relevance, in the activities, and then plugging them into Clay is one of the models that you see out there a lot. And if you're not familiar with what they're doing, you definitely got to check them out. And crunching all this different information and then giving it to what's called a GTM engineer. And this is a new position that's coming up in a lot of organizations where it used to be the sales ops, rev ops, marketing ops. There was all these different names for it, but it's essentially corralling all of this information into a bite-sized relevant package. Then you add on the SDR and have them take that, and instead of doing the work of 10 people every day, you have one person who can take that and run with it.
Yeah, this is super cool to see. And I love Clay is very happy that they're in the center of this little wheel, right?
Yeah.
But the technology doesn't matter.
Lenny Hines might be getting paid by Clay. I don't know.
So
but
you think? Yeah. Clay spends a ton of money, I think, from what I've heard from friends in the B2B influencer world. But the thing that I want to call out here that I think is really useful for everybody to understand is the technology doesn't matter all that much, like the individual, like the brands. The idea is, are you leveraging tools that are available today for relatively inexpensive to do the part of that job of qualifying if a lead is worth reaching out to for you? And this goes back to something I've talked about a lot. And if you come to our live classes weekly, you hear me say this all the time. Whenever there's a question around early development of a sales process, early on, if you're doing cold outbound, the list is the strategy. You could argue even more prevalent later too, but in the very beginning, I tell people spend 5x whatever you expect to spend in time and money on getting the list right. Because it is that important. And when you look at this fancy new term for a sales ops person, go-to-market engineer, like cracks me up that this title's a thing. But if you look at that role, all that role is that, especially in this diagram, is just list. And yeah, like maybe using AI to draft some personalized messaging and make sure tools are sending, you're using AI to automatically personalize emails and send those emails out. What you're looking at here is you're looking at someone whose sole responsibility is the list. And the SDR's job, and I think we're being a little over generous here with one SDR to 5 AEs, but the point is the job is the activity that the AI can't do, which is talking to people. Today it's talking to people. So anyway, we can move on here, but I just think
the other thing is that we put SDRs in a really tough position in that we're essentially today we're asking them to be GTM engineers. Yes. And so somebody just like comes out of college and they're just like, oh, that job looks interesting, and they're like, I like sales, I'll get into the job. And so they become an SDR, and it's like, here's like 27 different technologies, and we don't really know if our ICP is correct and who we should be talking to, but it's kind of directionally correct. Here, take all this stuff and go set appointments for my sales team. And then you come back in 3 months and it's like, I don't know what nobody responded, so it's like, now we just have to be realistic that with all the different technologies that are available, if you have headcount, expense budget for like 3 SDRs, I would highly recommend you break off one of those, hire a GTM engineer, get all the systems all lined up correctly, and get your act together from the list perspective, and then layer in the SDRs after.
Yeah, totally. David, let's go to one more slide here, and then I'll open up for today.
Yeah, definitely. This is one more graphic that I found, and this one I don't know who made this, but if you're on the call, thank you, and I'll give you full credit. This is one way to look at it. Just the way that consumer behavior has changed, and I look at it this way: in wars of the 1800s, you would just hire tons of people and throw them into the infantry, and it's like whatever, right? Now there's a intelligence center back in Florida somewhere with a bunch of people at the computers, and they're very strategically, handing out orders and tactics to the team on the ground. It's the same thing that's happened in go-to-market. So you've got if you think that we already talked about the go-to-market engineer who's in charge of the list basically and the conversion rates and keeping everything on track, layered in with an SDR because humans still need to be able to do some of this. But then you have the community aspect or the user aspect, and the person who's essentially the customer marketing to get the community solidified and do the events and things like that to keep them engaged and excited about what you're doing, and then creating inbound leads that go into the go-to-market engineer and is handed out to the SDRs. And so this is just one thing, but I see a lot of companies, especially the newer companies, they're set up in some form like this, and they're crushing it because they just are realizing how things should be set up these days.
Yeah, this is great. Super, super helpful. All right, let's transition to Q&A here. And I just posted for everybody. I would really appreciate if you can take the 60 seconds to fill out this survey. It's really helpful for us because it gives us a sense of if you like this kind of content. For those of you who are repeat, please do it again. This is a new format for us. Like generally it's I teach a framework, a template, a tool, or something that you're going to go and use immediately. And I wanted to spend a little time with David unpacking what is happening with AI and SDRs to try to do the best we can to arm you with a way you can be thinking about this, like really what feels like a more transitional period. So I'm going to put it one more time in the chat here. And if you could fill that out, that would be awesome. One of the questions that we got, David, where we could start with, oh, and David, could you mind posting the link to our book too in there? If you haven't read our book, it's called The Sales Development Framework. Pick up a copy. David will put the put the link on there. It's a really, really good read, and it'll kind of help give you a sense of some of the fundamentals that are required to building like a really well-functioning sales development team.
Okay. And Kyle, if I could just say, if he does read this, some jerk gave us a 1 star, and it's getting the star thing down. So if you like it, if you enjoy it, give it 5 stars.
Give us a review. Yes.
You.
Listen, you can't do public without a couple enemies. All right, cool. So let's answer the first question we got. If you have a question, please type it in. We'll go through a couple right now. But the first one here is from Raul, which is before one even gets the list right, how can one validate whether the ICP they're going after is the right one? And look, this is a really difficult question to answer. I'll give you my take. You validate it through sales, typically. Of course, when you're first building a product, you do everything you can to talk to the market, validate the problem is worth solving, and validate that your solution is solving their problem. You get your early users. You do everything you can to validate as much as possible that you have a true solution and you're targeting the right ICP. But even then, you get things wrong. So why I'm bringing this up here is because the ideal way to do this is through selling. So we get, what do you think it is? We roll out an approach to that ICP. Do we sell to that ICP via our approach? If not, try a new ICP, try a new approach. You take your pick of those two, depending on what you're working on, and you repeat that process over and over again until you have a kind of a market that you feel confident in. Anything you want to add there, David?
Yeah, I just threw in another book. I guess we're going to the library after this. This book, it's Can You Pass the Mom Test? And
yes.
Really, really tricky. So I'm going to take it even further back from developing your ICP and going to market is, do you have a product that people actually want and they're willing to buy? And I just say this because sometimes people will call us up, and I'm sure this happens to you, Kyle, and they're saying, hey, I'm having a really hard time going to market, and we can't identify our ICP and all this stuff. And it turns out that they're just building something that nobody wants.
Right.
And I mean, that's pretty depressing when you've been working on it for 5 years and you just raised a bunch of money. But I mean, at least you figure out that like your product sucks or nobody wants your service, so we can course correct to try to find out what that is. But I mean, that's even before we go to market.
Yeah, that's the Bob test by Rob Fitzpatrick. I think I said Fitzgerald, but it's Fitzpatrick if I remember right. Okay, so then the next question here is, can you list some of the most essential tools that a go-to-market engineer should be proficient in? I don't want to. You can, David, if you'd like to, but the reality is like the tools that you have, like you need to be proficient in list building and routing those leads and managing those leads. It's more of the fundamentals of sales operations. I view, and this is just my own opinion, and I'm happy to dive into this if somebody's curious. It's my view that a lot of these tools are all the same. They're not all that useful in a lot of cases, but it's need to be a good list builder, and you need to be able to understand the lead's journey to becoming a meeting, an opportunity.
Yeah, that's exactly. So, and not to be a broken record, but map out your jobs to be done on a daily basis. Look for the choke points, and then what's the customer journey? How are they finding out about you? How are they engaging with your SDRs? How are they becoming pipeline? And if there's gaps in there, then trust me, there's a ton of vendors out there. I won't say any names, but they're not paying me, so I won't say any names. But I would disclose that. There's lots of vendors out there that are happy to help you plug those gaps. But in the last quick thing, just to give the guy something, the pain point that Clay has exploited and why they're becoming so popular in the go-to-market space is they can take a bunch of different data points, a bunch of different tools, a bunch of different APIs, and they can bring it together to make something valuable that you can then hand over to the salespeople. And now there are a bunch of competitors that say that they do the same thing as Clay. They're cheaper, they're better, they're faster, etc. But that has been a new development that I've seen in this market over the last couple of years that has made a big impact.
Awesome. Will this be recorded? Yes, it will. Let me just see if I think wonderful session. Oh, just this is a Kyle question. Can you tease us on what's coming from Forest? Why the coders? Yeah, I hired a developer building a lot right now. I'll give you guys a little sense. We haven't launched this yet, but we do a lot of sales training with our clients. Like a lot of our work with clients is kind of go-to-market strategy, a lot of operations stuff. And then we end up ultimately working directly with the sales reps, SDRs, and AEs. I believe that the future of sales coaching is AI augmented sales coaches. I think the human is really required to deliver excellent coaching to sales reps because they've been there before. They know how to translate the challenges that they're running into training and coaching that actually helps them improve the skills they need to in order to solve those challenges that they're encountering on calls. So I'm developing a platform that analyzes the sales metrics for SDRs and AEs, takes those metrics and also looks at every single sales call and analyzes it, determines what this rep is struggling with, look at the data and identify what is actually holding this rep back from hitting quota, and then giving the sales coach very, very clear, here's where the rep is struggling, here's the data to back it up, and if they're able to improve in this even a little bit, it has this impact on their quota attainment. So then the rep or the sales coach can give really personalized training to the sales rep to help them improve in something that actually moves the needle. It's very hard to do, but we're making a ton of progress. So I'm excited to launch it when we're ready. I posted the links to the books in LinkedIn as well, so you guys will see that there. And also, if you have a chance, do the survey. That would be super helpful. I'll put the link one more time for everybody here who's on the live stream. Any final words, David?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to talk about this more, give me a call. I'm happy to help. Obviously been around for the hypes, highs, lows, everything that's been going on in this industry, and I think it's got a big future, but you just got to look at it the right way.
Totally. Awesome. Well, thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. Anything you need from us, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll talk soon. Bye now.